Well, I think he got out of the military a few years after I was born, or real close to around that time. Um, so I didn't know until I got older and I seen the after effects, the wake up calls, the discipline, the structure in the household. So um, yeah, that's where I can relate to it. And I had traveled a few places before my own cognizance because of that result as well. So
Okay, okay. So you sort of had a broad perspective from a very young age, just almost by proxy.
yeah, I would agree with that completely for sure.
Yeah. And what was it like for you, and in terms of family dynamics? Did you have a loving mother as well?
Of course. Yeah, I grew up in a two-parent household. My father, Fred Logan Jr., my mother, Sandra Logan. They were very loving, nurturing, etc.
Okay.
And yeah, it
And
was.
so you were born in Virginia Beach. Were you ever able to go back to Virginia Beach?
Oh yeah, I've been back a few times. I actually have a cousin that's stationed there right now in the military. So I've been back quite a few times. To visit. My dad retained some friends and people in the military there as well. So, I had actually some family that stayed out there for the first few years, going back every year. So very well connected. That's why it's almost like a step.
Okay. Your volume is a little low right now. I don't know if something's covering your microphone. You could turn your phone back up. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now tuning in, this is definitely going to be a great conversation. I want you to grab a friend, grab a family member, and have them to tune in here as well, because there's something here for everybody. And Fred, just like me, has a family in the house right now. He's an active father, and he's making his best way, just like I am, to bring you guys this story today. So bear with us. Now, Fred, at about the age of 2 years old, you said you guys moved to Ohio.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Did my value correct this up a little bit?
It's a little bit better.
Okay. Um, yeah, we moved to Ohio. That's where my mother's family, actually, both my grandparents were at the time. So, on both ends, for my mother and my father, that was, their decision to move home and be around family where, they kind of had help with us, me and my sister growing up, and support of that nature.
Sure, sure. And so you also have family in Ohio then.
Yeah, very limited. Outside of my grandparents, there wasn't a lot.
Hmm.
Outside of my grandparents, there wasn't a lot. Both of my parents' roots are in the South. My dad being from Lexington, Kentucky, and the Logan name is pretty strong down there. And then my mother being from Nashville, with the Watkins and the Kennards, and they're pretty strong down there. So their roots are outside of Ohio, but their immediate family was here at the time they moved here.
Hmm. Did you grow up feeling like you had a family legacy?
Um, I say that's something I've struggled with because to answer your question, no, there was no immediate legacy that I could see. But I say that with all due respect to my mother and father because they preached it constantly, and I watched them build it constantly. And now at 30, I definitely feel like I have a set of shoes to fill and a legacy to uphold, going forward, and also to pass down to my children.
Okay, okay. Um, that being said, can you walk me through a day in the life of Fred? Let's say at 5 years old. What was a day in your life like?
Oh man, it was a ball to say the least. I mean, it was video games and I played a lot of sports, man. It was probably football, basketball, baseball season, whatever I was doing at the time. Riding bikes with friends, stuff like that. It was that was pretty much my everyday. Less my dad had me cutting grass or washing cars or doing some type of chore around the house.
Right. You know, a lot of conversations that I have in general, not necessarily here on the show, and I talk to people and they tell me about, the struggles and the adversities that they had as a child. Sometimes people's families are so torn apart before they're even born, and I've even heard where people will connect dysfunction or brokenness in their family to the race that they belong to. But that will be not true in your case. I just can't look at you and say, hey, I'm pretty sure your father wasn't there. I'm pretty sure you had a dysfunctional family growing up. And so it's very refreshing to talk to somebody who is not coming from that perspective.
Um, I'll say to touch that from a few angles. It's different. It's different growing up in our community, in the Black community with a family structure. It's different when you're perceived by, the other communities as well, not to have a family structure, and they're surprised when they see it. But it's something that it took me a long time. I probably even well into my manhood to be able to embrace that and to realize, the good that came from it and the good that comes with it. But yeah, that is definitely it's definitely a different feeling when you start to notice all of your friends and everybody you're coming up with, their households just don't look the same.
Right. And that being said, do you keep in touch with any of your friends from childhood today?
Yeah, plenty of them. Actually, quite a few of my elementary buddies and childhood friends, we're in business together now. Um,
Wow.
I got one guy I went to elementary school with, and he does heating and air conditioning. Another guy that does concrete. Another guy that just does remodeling, drywall, things of that nature, laying tile, and we try to collaborate as much as possible.
Wow. Would you like to recognize some of those guys right now?
Oh yeah, no problem. Jarrell Johnson with JCR Remodeling, um, Joe Rice with Rice Construction LLC, and Darnell Sharp with Sharp Air Solutions.
Wow. So between three friends and you guys stick together like friends should, you guys have remodeling, construction, and HVAC. Is that correct?
As well as electric. I do electric myself, so yeah.
Wow, including electric. Um, what's that like? Talk about that dynamic, being able to call three or four friends and you guys effectively are a corporation when you walk into a building or a house space.
Well, it's inspiring. It's humbling. It's humbling to say that there's so much more work to be done in that lane. There's so much more growth to be had as we continue to grow our individual journeys. But to come together and be able to put some projects together, there's very few Black builders nationwide, but that's something we've all talked about getting into. Um, it's very it's cool to say the least. It's cool to be able to say, yeah, I got a guy for you when I'm at a customer's house, and it's also just proof of how strong the Black dollar and community could be as well. The way we bounce work off of each other. I will say a good 30% of my business comes just from word of mouth, and those guys referring me, and I try to swing it back their way.
Wow. Basically what you're saying is that you all are doing something that in barbershop conversations we say needs to be happening, but a lot of people don't really figure out how to do it or they don't actually get around to doing it. They're wishing that we did more of it, but in your environment, in your world, you and your friends actually keep dollars in your community. You circulate them amongst one another, and you help each other to grow economically.
Yeah. Yeah, that. I mean, it's very interesting. It's something I'll try not to talk about as it's happening. But it's something that's definitely in the back of my mind at all times. I'm always real conscious of who I'm using when I'm referring business, who I'm shopping with, who I'm spending my money with, and I hope that energy comes back to me. And 9 times out of 10, it does. So yeah, it's definitely a interesting fact. It's probably something I noticed when I was serving tables, man. You have a lot of people, even some of our own, that would look up and be like, I don't want to take them. That table 10, 15 Black people coming in late at night. And me personally, that was my challenge, to make the experience enjoyable and to make my money as well. And that's where I first noticed, how strong we could be with each other. You know what I'm saying? When we change that narrative and that perception of how we look at each other.
Right. And I also heard you say that you were waiting tables. So it's not like you just started out in your own business. You actually, started from, a whole different capacity, so to speak, and kind of worked up to where you are today.
Agreed. Like it was a journey. I had to find myself. I went down several different paths. I did college. I did several Fortune 500 companies, 40 hours a week, office jobs. I did a lot of things before I found my lane and actually went back to my roots and wanted to follow in my father's footsteps. But serving tables was one of the better ones for me. Um, I kind of I found something I was good at there. Just the ability to connect people, talk with people, and make a decent living as well while I was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we have a few visitors here in the building, and we want to acknowledge them. Orlando Riley says hello to everybody, and Felicia Hamilton says we need more motivators like you, sir. She's talking about Fred in our community. Children need more men to look up to, and communities need more positive leaders. Hats off to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Felicia, for that comment. Definitely appreciate that. But I want to pass that buck straight off to my father and my grandfather, even because without having them role models for me to look up to, I don't think I'd be nowhere near to what I'm doing today.
Right. That was a very appropriate comment that you just made. And can you take a moment to talk about some of the lessons that your father taught you? Because maybe there's a young man out there or a young woman out there who could use some valuable lessons that you learned. Can you pass some of those on today?
I guess the most valuable one to me, because I am a father of four myself,
Okay.
is how to be a father. And the fact that he's still teaching me and guiding me and being a father in my life on a daily basis. It's rarely too many days we go without speaking. He doesn't hold back when giving his advice or sugarcoat anything for me. It's always straight from the hip, and I really appreciate that. But um, some of the earliest lessons and the biggest lessons he taught me was definitely work ethic. You know, um, man don't work, man don't eat. I was taught them words really young. But outside of that, just how to be a family man, um, and I guess building something for your kids, for your family, for your legacy, and everything you put in your work. Being a representative or speaking, for that aspect of your life.
Fred, you just gave us three really big jewels there. And because I have some of your time today, I would like for you to unpack those three concepts because I think that those are three things that if we take them and apply them, I think we can get toward the right direction as we grow up into men. And I'm not necessarily talking about you and I'm talking about younger men out there today, or maybe even grown men out there who they just never got that level of quality communication. So the first thing that you said was work ethic. What exactly is work ethic? Can you tell me?
And the older I get, the more different I view it. But work ethic is just that ability to sustain um, your level of energy, your level of commitment, your level of drive when the chips are stacked against you, when it's not perfect. Work ethic is what you do when nobody's looking. Work ethic is your discipline and your efforts. To me, uh, your work ethic is what sells your business, or it's going to be the downfall of it. So it's many hats from what I was able to see coming up.
Okay, all right. And then the next thing that you said was be a family man. I see that some young men they run from the idea of having a family. Sometimes our family they come and they be a part of the episode. You say hi to them. Sometimes people they run away from the idea of being a father or even being a mother for that matter. Young ladies they'll find out that they're pregnant, even if they can take care of it. It makes them nervous. It makes them worried about the future. I know young men who they don't want to have the child. They might run away. I've heard stories of people who run away. What was it that kept you there to build your family as opposed to being afraid to build your family?
I guess it was almost second nature, man. Just coming from where I came from, I was in love young, and my high school sweetheart, and found out she was pregnant. It just kind of snowballed from there. It was never really a goal of mine, but it definitely wasn't anything I ever feared or had the reluctancy of wanting to run away. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I at least owed my father that much. You talk about being able to pay a parent back. I know I never can, but I owed him that much, to be a stand-up guy and a father of kids for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, it was just kind of second nature. And it blossomed from a relationship I had young, and that I still have that. It produced four beautiful children for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, when you started a family, and for those of people who are familiar with the format of this conversation, we are going to rewind it back and talk about your middle school and high school experiences. But we have a really good organic flow right now, and I want you to expound a little bit about the effect that having children and being in a committed relationship had on you. Did it make you feel more confident about what you were up against as a young man? Can you talk about that?
Um, in my opinion, I would say no. Um, it actually made it for me a lot more challenging.
Okay.
There are things you want to give your family. There's a role you want to play. And no matter how I can look to anybody else, my most important view or the most important way I'm ever going to be received is to, my family, my kids, their mother as well. And so it did put me kind of under a pressure cooker. But, I feel like it's going to go two ways. You either going to dig yourself a deeper hole and when you're under that pressure, or you're going to form into a diamond and rise above.
Mhm.
And so I think it did the latter for me. But I don't know, man. I guess it was always something that was in the back of my hand, still second nature to me. So, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah. And then also I want to know, what role did your mother play in broadening your perspective? Times where you might not have been looking at the bigger picture. Did your mother have conversations with you that kind of brought you back to center sometimes?
Of course. I would say, I can only speak from my perspective. So, of course, being in the Black community, as a young man, you have this obligation for bravado to be tough, to be, you know, certain things, right? And my mother was always that balance. Like, well, it's also okay to be intelligent, son. It's also okay to speak articulate. It's also okay to to be well educated, and to have other visions outside of that. Football, basketball, this, that, and the third. You know what I'm saying? Or being cool with this, that, and the third. She was that third eye that kind of opened my vision to a lot of different things. She
Right.
was in corporate for a long time and taught me a lot about, playing that game and understanding that role in business. She was definitely my first introduction or lesson to business, period, and professionalism.
Wow. Okay. So your mother was actually your introduction to business.
For
And
sure.
did you also have siblings? I didn't ask about that yet. Did you also have
I,
siblings?
I did. I only have one, and that's my sister.
Okay.
My little big sister.
A
She's
little
smaller
bit.
than me, but she's 3 years older. And yeah, that's my heart right there. But she lives in Chicago now. She does something crazy, but bioengineering for a pharmaceutical group or something of that matter. But yeah,
Okay.
she's doing pretty well. She's up in Chicago area.
All right. Hey, talk about one of the best times y'all had, man.
Me and my sister, man, we had so many. We to this day we have a bond with each other, but I off the top of my head, I probably couldn't just give you one. It's just so many. It's a long list from birthdays to vacations to just all types of things. We both play basketball, so some of
Wow.
our best moments was battles, and seeing
Right.
who could make the most jumpers and who could win the game with 21, etc.
Right. Hey, shout out to all the sisters out there in the world. Shout out to all the sisters. Sister is a strong partner in life. It's your fellow comedian, your fellow wing person, somebody that's gonna come through and save your day. So often, you know what I mean. I
All
also
the
want to go
time.
ahead and commend it. Yeah, I want to send a shout
It
out to
just to
all
touch
the
on that, said like I know you ain't even asked me yet, but like that struck a chord with me because yeah, my sister's been there through a lot for me, and she has always been that first hand that kind of saved me or pulled me out of something before it got too bad. So definitely shout out to sisters, shout out to big sisters for that.
Yeah, it actually kind of struck a chord with me too, man, because I think about how much love I have for my sisters, and not always just my sister. If I meet your sister and we communicate and I see the type of person that she is, well, guess what? I love your sister too. You know what I'm saying? And if I were to bring my sister around you, I would guess what? I would want you to love my sister too. And so I want you to kind of expound on what do you think about it when people say we don't love our women and we don't protect our women enough. Is that true?
Again, so I met a guy actually doing my apprenticeship for electric through a company called Denier Electric. But I met a guy, and he was real deep. He asked me a lot of profound questions, like every morning we talked about life. He was younger than me, but I found a lot of wisdom in him. And so he said, he was challenging my thought to say, are we really experiencing these things, or is it just that the narrative hasn't changed and that we're going with the narrative? We're going to, oh, we don't stick together. We don't protect our sisters, this, that, and the third. So that was new to me. That was news to me. I've always been a gentleman. I've always been the type to protect my sister or a female in general. But that's how it was taught to me from my father. That was first and foremost. My sister might be able to get away with murder and put her hands on me, but I bet not dare. And he wouldn't want anybody putting their hands on my mother. And it's just always been that protection, 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 protection. Whether it's my sister or mother, has been drilled into my head since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna ask you an open-ended question, and we're gonna do a lot of that today because one thing that I learned along the way is that no matter what I think about myself in the world, people don't know me, and people don't know you. They're learning about us both today. So I think no question is a stupid question, and I want to ask you, what is dignity? What is dignity, and are we losing it as individuals out there in the world?
That's a tough one for me to answer. I know the definition, but as far as pinpointing or as far as sticking to one side of it, I don't know if I can, because I know you can define dignity as being upholding yourself to a certain standard. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or the way you carry yourself and present yourself, mm-hmm. And the morals and values you hold close to. Mm-hmm. That would be your dignity. But you got examples of that where you see some of the most dignified people, the people you would hold to those standards, and then it comes out later or in the light, that in the dark they were a bad person or this, that, and the third. So it's kind of hard to define for me, but to me personally, I would just say dignity is just being a man of your word, sticking to morals and values. It's the pillars of your character and who you are and what you believe in.
Mm-hmm. Are we lacking dignity out there in the world today?
I don't think so. I think Black people are some of the most prideful people that there are, the most dignified people that there are. So I don't really see that we're lacking dignity. I think with the internet, everything's exposed at 2, 3, 5 times the rate, and we may not like what we see at first, but there are new norms being created every day. That's how we grow and evolve as a culture, as a society. So I don't feel like we're losing dignity. I do feel like less of the dignified individuals, both in our community and other communities, are being represented on a national or public scale. You know what I mean? We like the filth, the drama, and the undignified people to be shown first. That's what grabs our eye. But I mean, there's a lot of dignified things happening in your own community, nationwide, every day. So I don't feel like we're losing it. I feel like that's another thing that just may be being misrepresented or misreported.
Sure. One of the things that I like about you, Fred, is that you seem to speak from a personal perspective. And when I say personal perspective, you seem to speak from the perspective of you being a Black man. And a lot of people are afraid to say, hey, listen up, world, I'm a Black man, and this is what I have to say about the Black community. But in all reality, we need people to claim that. We need people to say, listen up, I'm a Black man, and this is what I think about the Black community. It should not be offensive to other communities for you to talk about the Black community or the African American community. You don't talk that way to be offensive. You talk that way to be clear about who you are and who you're dealing with the most. Is that correct?
Agreed. I guess also it's just hard for me to see it any other way. I was made aware very young of who I was and who I was in comparison in this country, and the role I had to play in this country. I was taught very young, by my parents as well, represent yourself this way or don't be upset with the way you're taking if you choose not to. You know what I'm saying? And following certain trends just wasn't for me because I didn't want to be represented that way. You know what I mean? So I would definitely say that I don't know, man. Being black is not something I was taught. It's been more something I experienced. You know, I went to a Christian school from an all black school in the middle of my days, my 7th and 8th grade year, and it was a private education, and it was predominantly white. It was maybe a handful of black kids in the whole school, K through 12. And that was my first introduction, not to racism, but just to the differences. Just to, yeah, you do actually see color. Yeah, you will be treated differently. Yeah, your culture is not always going to be accepted. And just learning how to navigate that and kind of adapt and still try to, I quote it, but keep my black card as well as being able to mix and mingle on other sides and other cultures as well.
Sure. Hey, listen, I admire your courage and bravery. Ladies and gentlemen, share this stream out, invite a friend, invite a family member, because we're having a very good conversation with a prime example. We'll be right back in about 1:15. America's Next Motivator. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network. And we're back. Hey, Fred, you were actually getting real deep just now, and we're going to retouch on some of those topics. But I want to talk about, what were you doing in middle school? I'm trying to understand how you became the man that you are today. What were you up to in middle school? What were you doing in your social life? What was going on?
I guess, well, I mean, my 7th grade year, I was just, I don't know, man. Trying to find myself, a little bit of a clown, got into fights, got in a little trouble in school. And then so my 8th grade year, my parents were like, yo, doing private school. That's what's going on. And so I get into this new environment, and my 8th grade and my freshman year, it's just, it's changes you have to adapt to. It's just a different culture. It's a little bit of a culture shock, and you're like, oh, that's how we play the game here. Cool. And you just adapt, you roll with the punches, and I don't think my grades really changed. I don't think my experience of life really changed. It's just, a chapter in my book that opened and closed, for 2 short years.
I see the football trophies in your background. What role did football play for you growing up?
Well, those are actually my sons. They're trying to carry on tradition. But, man, football was my exposure to weather conditions. Football was my exposure to work and work ethic, 2-a-days. I mean, being bleeding and stepped on and hurting games, and your coach like, I don't really care, I need you back out there. It teaches you a lot of principles that I uphold to this day. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it wrong or harsh to say nobody cares? No, that's the truth. 9 times out of 10, no matter how bad you might be hurt or what type of situations you may be going through, your boss, your customers, people you are involved with every day, they don't care. They don't have time to care. So it's best that you learn how to compartmentalize basically suck it up and move forward with your goals at hand.
You see a place for sports in the lives of children going forward right here in America.
Oh yeah. I just feel like sports taught me so much. First thing it taught me was how to work for a goal. Second thing it taught me was accountability. If I didn't make the team or if I wasn't starting on the team, my dad was never the type to go talk to a coach. It was, hey son, you ain't been working hard enough. Get busy. And so it just taught me a lot about life that I didn't even know it was teaching me at the time. And it's principles I hope, or I don't really even see another way of teaching my children.
Right. Yeah. Sports definitely is a way to teach valuable lessons in life, and I think it's important to maintain a sport, social life, and academic balance in our communities, in all communities, because it's nothing worse than somebody who played sports but they didn't develop off the field or off the court. What do you think about that?
Agreed. And you see a lot of instances of that where there's a lack of balance, and then you have really talented individuals who end up squandering the opportunity just based off that fact alone. They were a heck of an athlete, but not so much in the classroom or not so much in social settings, and then they got in trouble and kicked out of school, things of that nature. So it's definitely important to be well-rounded.
Right.
Definitely something I can say. Both my parents strive for me to have, social life with friends, females, sports, working a job in high school, etc. That I had that balanced time to wear several different hats, and that would continue to be life.
Right. So as you moved into high school, who did you think that you were going to become? What did you want to be?
I just had a laugh about this on social media the other day, where I was sharing my senior picture and I had on this pinstripe suit, and my mother's mind and mine as well. I was going to be a lawyer. I went to school for law for 3 years. I mean, I didn't do bad academically. I just changed my vision at some point, but you couldn't have told me at that time that I wasn't going to be a lawyer, a defense attorney to be exact.
Wow. Let me ask you something. On this picture, you with the pinstripe suit, did you still have the tag on your sleeve or what?
On that said, I'm going to request that you mind your business. Next question.
Hey.
Nah, but I was a little inexperienced at the time. I was a new suit buyer. I'm like, oh, that suit's fly. I'll take that. And, I never made it around to cutting the tag off. We know better.
Ladies and gentlemen out there, when you get your new suit, cut the tags off, please. You don't want to be walking around with the tags on like Fred.
You definitely don't want it in a picture to be remembered.
Hey, okay, so you want to be a lawyer. So then, I mean, were you a big debater? Were you a big debater in school? Did you like going back and forth with people? Who are you in that arena?
Yeah, I think I do. I think I'm a talker. I think I like to debate. I think I'm educated, well-rounded on quite a few different subjects. But actually, I guess my heart was in a different place. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people that couldn't afford attorneys and stuff like that. I wanted to be able to get people out when I seen, the unfairness in the judicial system, and how it's different for us versus them and vice versa. But so that was kind of my vision at the time. But I was a little bit of a debater and a talker, and I like the attention and stuff that came with it. I actually was on the forensics or the debate team in college.
Wow. All right. And I take it you probably were driving at this time as well.
Yeah.
I live in New York now, and Brooklyn, New York to be exact. And it's not uncommon for somebody who's a senior in high school to not have a driver's license and to not be driving a vehicle. But for you, a lot of your high school seniors, peers, y'all were driving cars. Is that correct?
Agreed. It's almost a rite of passage up here. 16, 17, you're getting the keys to, the elders' whips or cars, or you getting the keys to your own. But there was the fair share classmates that didn't have that experience as well. So I think that really depends on, where you come from, how you come up. Some parents believe in teaching them that responsibility young, and some would prefer for them to hold off. So, but yeah, I would say it was more common in my area in the high school I grew up in.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I wanted to ask that is because my mother told me something when I was younger that kind of stuck with me. And she said, listen, you are a young black man and you're driving and you're living out here in the suburbs. And the police don't always get you because you're doing the wrong thing standing outside. A lot of the time, the police, they approach you in traffic. Was that ever your experience?
Several times. I mean, I guess from my first experience with the cops, I was on my way to a high school football game. I got pulled over in the middle of the road with football jersey on, school uniform, pants on, and was accused of robbing a bank. So, you know, not dressed as a bank robber or a villain of any type, but that's how I was characterized. So, um, I've had my car illegally searched and torn apart, basically, searching for drugs as a minor. And, at the time I wasn't dealing drugs or nothing like that, but um, I definitely say my experience has been different than counterparts of other cultures.
Mm-hmm. Now, did that make you apprehensive about driving? How did that affect your relationship with police going forward? What were some of the thoughts that you had in your mind about surviving in traffic as a young black man?
It's just always something to this day that's in the back of my mind. Of course, now I'm a lot better at making sure my tags are legit, cars maintenance and up to date, and there's no reason for me to be stopped. Um, but yeah, it's definitely the talk that my parents had with me when I first got the keys was, hey, it's a little different out here, and if you are to get pulled over, then I definitely expect you to act in this manner and conduct yourself this way. And the reason being is I need you to come home. You know what I'm saying? And the reason being is, have them call me first and let me deal with that. And you are to get yourself in a no uh, confrontation or you know any type of situation with the police, based off your interaction. You had no control over them pulling you over, but uh, your interaction shouldn't worsen the situation. It shouldn't cause you not to come home to me. That was my father and my message to me, basically.
You know what, Fred? I think this is another teaching moment for our audience out there. There could be people who they don't get to look at the world through a young black man's lenses very often, and so to hear you talking right now is a commodity and it's extremely valuable. I wish I could pay you for being here today, but we're all giving back to the community here at America's Next Motivator.
For
um,
sure.
you mentioned don't do anything to get pulled over in the first place. For those young people out there, or even adults out there who don't know some of the tips that they can be doing to not get pulled over in the first place, I know one of them is making sure that your headlights and your tail lights are in working order. You can get pulled over for that. Do you have any other things that people might not know about?
Definitely. And it's really, probably way deeper of a subject than I would even want to touch base on. But, the BMV, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, whichever it's called in your state, it is an entire system from the tickets to the policemen to the fines to suspended licenses to even jail time. And that the whole system is interdependent on each other. And so the quicker you kind of see it that way, where you avoid it from jump, oh, my license is going to be good if I'm driving, my light's going to be right, this, that, and the third, then you kind of avoid yourself the headaches later on. At least that was just my experience. Um, but, a lot of times we get caught being kids doing normal stuff, you know, normal stuff being drinking, normal stuff being whether it be smoking marijuana or something like that, stuff that kids experiment with. And the only reason we get caught doing that is because we didn't have the first part taken care of. Tags just happened to be expired. Headlight just happened to be out. And we're driving negligent, and it piles on top of each other. Where the headache is enormous at this point. And the legal fees and stuff are enormous at this point, and you actually facing jail time. Now you've marked yourself in the system. So I guess just being aware of how the whole thing works and kind of trying to maneuver from a defensive standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If I make sure I'm good, then I've already reduced my chances of having that encounter with a police.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very big because for some people, And mind you, every single thing that we're talking about today is applicable for people from all different races. But it's important to have the courage to remain in the shoes of your identity. Um, for those of you who might not know out there, taking care of your tail light, your front lights, making sure that your license is legitimate, making sure that your registration is not expired. What else?
Front
Um,
license plate lights. I mean, the smallest details,
Speeding
the
limit,
smallest details.
watching the speeding limit.
Speeding limit,
You know,
all types of stuff. Even just knowing the area you're in and how the cops operate in that area. You know what I mean? Seatbelts. The list goes on.
right? And then the other thing is, instead of you getting angry about it, saying, "Hey, man, I'm always getting pulled over for this, and I'm always getting pulled over for that," it sounds like you decided to get all of that type of business in order. You wisened up about it as opposed to allowing it to make you angry. And that's one of the things that helped you to pretty much circumvent some unnecessary problems. I mean, sometimes while it might be an inconvenience that you got pulled over, instead of getting angry, sometimes you got to take a step back and look at the situation and say, hey, but I do need to have my business a little bit tighter. You know what I mean? But then the other thing that I also heard you say is make sure that your conduct is appropriate. You don't want to throw a temper tantrum or be argumentative with the police, because at the beginning and the end of the day, they're a police officer. You're not. You want to go home. And so, think about your parents if you get pulled over out there. Think about your family and realize that these people want you to come home. Is that correct?
Agreed. I think it's also inevitable in our culture a lot of times, whether it's sports or the surroundings, that we grow up with a quick trigger. We grow up with a shoot first mentality or a fight first mentality, aggressive first, and we don't see where it pays to sit back and think and kind of absorb. Hold on, what am I doing wrong here? How can I correct my part of this? And then maybe I'm not in this situation at all. Um, that another lesson, I guess, came from my father. We had two different tempers, and from day one I was taught to be in control of mine, and to realize how that can be beneficial down the long road. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Think the long game. Do I get mad because I'm getting pulled over tonight, or do I get mad at my own personal time, correct my behavior, and live to see another day, etc. You know what I mean?
We have this notion out there. We have this notion out there that you can't be a square in life. You can't be too intelligent. You can't be too um, mature, or else you don't seem as tough. You don't seem as much of a man. What do you think about the balance between definitely being a man, but also being able to do square business? Is that okay? Is that an okay balance to have?
It's not only okay, but it's necessary.
Mm.
It's a necessary skill to be able to switch hats in our community. Um, and I'm way less concerned now than I was as a teenager. As a teenager, yeah, on my frontal lobe, I was thinking about being tough and about protecting some image that I never had in the first place. But at 30, I could really care less. You know what I mean? I'll be as square as you want me to be as long as the check cashes. Um, because at the end of the day, it's about providing for my family. It's about my personal career goals and growth. So, I never identified as being a square. If I need to learn words and be book smart in order to grow as an individual at this point in my life, then that's what I need to do. But I'm not going to categorize it as being tough or not tough or square, not this. It's more so the lane I fit in and where I belong and how I'm going to move forward. That's it.
Right. And so I hear what you're saying. You want to realize your true image, but you still you want to be authentic. Basically, you want to be who you are. I think that's the best way to be. You know,
Agreed.
um,
Agreed.
I spent
And
some time
it's easy to have your identity lost coming up. We
out.
already don't. That's a common struggle amongst any race. So when you're coming of age, identifying who you are and realizing who you are and who you are, you'll see those people become successful first.
Okay. Okay. Your volume went out a little bit. I don't know if you're touching the microphone, but if you can talk about there's also there's a painting by a man named Gilbert Young, and it's an image of one man pulling another man up over a wall. I don't know if you've seen that image before. Have you seen it?
Yes.
When I think about people talking about the crab in a barrel mentality, I think about that portrait by Gilbert Young. And the thing about that interaction is that that's actually one man pulling another man up instead of one man pulling another man down.
Right.
Do you think we need to reevaluate the crab in a barrel mentality that goes on in our community and start to teach people that, hey, I know when you look at the image of two people tugging and tugging, guess what? If you're going to do it right, they're not actually pulling each other down. They're actually pulling each other up. Do we need to have that conversation?
Definitely, it's meant to be had at a young age. I think with constant.
Hold on, you're I'm listening.
But yeah, I would say it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. Reason being, I think we're taught to compete constantly from an early age, and then we get out here and we flip that mindset and we compete against each other. When I guess I just came up on the term nepotism and
Okay.
how a lot of us are actually restarting because we don't even want to use the resources available to us. Those in the Black community that have made it. And it's that same mentality. I got to make it on my own. I got to compete against the person next to me that we got to get rid of, and relying on each other more, being unified more, even just thinking bigger. So what? You're semi-successful, or you're even, dare I say, successful. How much more can we do together once we combine our minds, our visions, our dreams, our support systems? Once we combine everything is magnified. We could do so much more, whether it's from a monetary standpoint, a motivational standpoint, or just giving back to the community. It doesn't matter what the goal is. It's at the point that it's unified that it grows in strength.
Absolutely. And one thing that really stuck out to me in what you're saying right now is that competition doesn't mean that we're enemies.
At all.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
I say a lot of people ain't gonna like it, but I say LeBron is a great example of that. A lot of people don't like the way he approaches the game as far as not, I'm gonna make this guy my enemy and put 60 points on him. He work out with him. He do other things, but at the end of the day, he still goes out and compete at a high level. You know what I mean? And just because I compete don't mean I gotta hate you off the court. Our kids can still kick it. We can still be this way and that way in the third. Like, competition is just a mere part of life, a very small part of it. And to me, no matter how much of a competitor I can be, I've always got my best results out of working with people, putting people together.
Wow.
Out of growing a system.
Wow.
It's just always been my experience.
Wow. I think you touched on a good point there, which is when we actually work together, we're more powerful together than we are divided. So competition doesn't make us enemies. Competition is good because, as they say, iron sharpens iron. And I think that we need to welcome that. We need to welcome. If I say, hey, the sky looks this color. You say, no, Cedric, the sky is that color, and let's have a healthy conversation about our differences in perspective. You know what I mean? I think that the barbershop is a good example of a place where iron sharpens iron, and that's a healthy thing. What do you think is the importance of the barbershop, as we look at healthy competition?
Well, I think the barbershop is a pillar for pretty much everything in our community. We don't network enough in there. We don't do enough business moves in there all together. And you know, while I'm on the subject, if you're ever in Cincinnati, Ohio, his name on Facebook is Raphael Bowling, best barber in Cincinnati. Um, the barbershop is called Uptown Cuts, and
It's okay, brother.
my
It's okay.
apologies, my apologies.
It's all right.
But like I said, his barbershop is Uptown Cuts, and I've told him several times. I mean, the man can cut hair for sure, but the reason I'm in his chair is the knowledge. Every time he's bouncing business ideas, he's telling me about a new vision or hustle he's got. All legit stuff. I mean, I think he's into breeding dogs now and doing other stuff, but his mentality was so far advanced than I've heard in other barbershop talks. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I needed a lawyer one time. I found my lawyer in the barbershop. Um, like we don't use that place enough to network, bounce ideas off each other, rely on each other, kind of as our meeting place, our meeting quarters.
Right. Now if we can, I wanna switch gears a little bit because I noticed that you have on an FNS shirt right now. And what does FNS stand for?
FNS, a lot of people think it stands for Fred Son because it is me and my father's business, but it's actually stands for Fred Sander. That's my mother and father's initials.
Okay.
It's a business my father started over 30 years ago. And so I went through my apprenticeship and then I immediately quit and jumped in his business and gotten to growing that as well and continuing on that legacy.
And now, are your parents into businesses? Is that what they do? Do they build businesses in the community?
Well, this was the first, and then now they have MB Essence, which they co-own together as well, which is a hair and beauty supply shop over in Fairfield, Ohio, on Route 4. And she specializes in the human hair or the virgin wigs and bundles and things of that nature, as well as all your other beauty supply shop needs. But it's something they got into later in life, and I picked up, I guess, a lot earlier, a lot quicker, was inspired a lot sooner. Like, yo, that's the lane I need to be in. That's where I want to be, is in business for myself, or in business with my family versus working for somebody.
Absolutely. You know what? This has been a very productive conversation, and as we round third base, I just got like 3 questions for you. I need you to answer them within 1 minute, and then
Okay.
I'll get you back to your family. Tell your children I said thanks for allowing you to share some time with us today. First question: what is survival to you?
Survival is the basic needs: food, shelter, and water. Survival is providing for my family. Survival is being able to wake up another day if I'm granted the opportunity.
Absolutely. What is success to you?
Success is actually being able to grow and or flourish in that same life. So I've conquered survival, and I'm living and breathing every day now. But now success is about accomplishing goals, and about the path I walk.
What is greatness to you?
To me, I guess greatness is the after effects of the first 2 mentioned. Greatness would be once I've set those goals, once I've walked that path, once I've mastered surviving,